lesson. We are back to a guide to ancient Egypt on Rising Stars. We have looked at the intro, we have looked at part 1, 2 and 3. So we are off to part 4, Kings, Queens and Pharaohs. Now at the bottom of the screen you will see that I can go to the contents page and I can choose from there the section that I want. So we're going to number 4, Kings, Queens and Pharaohs. So let's find out about those. So remember, I will read this part for you. You can listen to the video if you want to, or you can move straight on, log on to Rising Stars by yourself and read by yourself and fill out your quiz as you go along, or you can listen to me and then fill out the quiz afterwards.
So, what was it like to be the ruler of Egypt? Until the end of the Old Kingdom, Egyptians believed their kings were living gods. Later, they saw them as people who were going to be gods after they died. The king owned everything. Anyone lucky enough to be allowed to come near the king had to look down, kneel and kiss the floor. To be allowed to kiss his foot was a real honour. I have to say, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't like feet very much. Egyptians believed that their kings made the sun rise and the Nile flood by performing rituals every day. If the kings did not perform the rituals, Egyptians believed disaster and chaos would follow. It was a big responsibility. Many rulers of ancient Egypt were women. The king's wife could also have great power and was often depicted in statues and paintings as nearly as important as her husband, which is unusual for such a long time ago. Early Egypt. It all began in about 3100 BCE. Ancient Egypt began so long ago that many facts are unknown. No one is quite sure of the name of the king who unified Egypt. Early historians said his name was Menes, but today historians think it may have been Aha or Nama. Whoever it was, he must have been a very powerful person. Aha or Nama became the first ruler of all Egypt. His descendants ruled all of Egypt for hundreds of years. The Old Kingdom, 2690 to 2180 BCE. The most famous and lasting monuments of ancient Egypt were built during this period. These were the pyramids. Egypt was peaceful and rich. It sold goods to other countries. In exchange, they got exotic goods they could not produce themselves, such as scented wood like cedar or myrrh. The first intermediate period, 2180 to 2055 BCE. Pepi II was the last powerful king of the Old Kingdom. After he died, Egypt was no longer unified. Fact: one ancient Greek historian said that during his time, 70 kings ruled for 70 days. This must be an exaggeration, but it shows how fast things were changing. Okay, we've then got the Middle Kingdom, 2055 to 1650 BCE. The Middle Kingdom began when a king of Thebes in Upper Egypt, Mentuhotep II, finally conquered the whole of Egypt. Many soldiers died in a lot of battles, and some have been found buried in the tomb. Okay, and that was the tomb. It was his tomb that was in Mahat's feather. So, fact: during the Middle Kingdom, Osiris became the most important god, and we've heard of Osiris before, and I can't remember which story we heard of him in. Okay, we've got the second intermediate period, 1650 to 1550 BCE. The Middle Kingdom period came to an end when people called the Hyksos arrived in Egypt from the west of Asia. With them came technology, better weapons and horse-drawn chariots that stunned and overwhelmed the Egyptians with their speed. The Hyksos took control of much of Egypt. The Hyksos rulers were quick to adopt many of the Egyptian gods, especially Set. Set was the god of deserts and storms, and he was a lot like their own god of deserts and storms, Hadad. However, Egyptian kings in Thebes continued to fight the Hyksos rulers. One of them, Sequenetao, seems to have been killed in battle against Hyksos. The head of his mummy shows dreadful wounds. Over the centuries, the different people who invaded ancient Egypt adopted Egyptian gods and customs, or mixed them with their own. This meant that Egyptian civilization was not lost even when the country was going through different times. The New Kingdom. The Hyksos were eventually defeated by Ahmose, who became the first pharaoh of the New Kingdom. Many of the most famous Egyptian monarchs came from Ahmose's family. One of them, Hatshepsut, began as a regent for her stepson, but Hatshepsut was not satisfied with being a regent and crowned herself king instead, even though she was a woman. She was a successful pharaoh, she did business with other countries, and she also had many important temples built. She reigned for over 20 years. However, after her death, all of the images of her were destroyed. Thutmose IV was a pharaoh who ruled in around 1400 BCE. He restored the statue of the Sphinx, which had got covered up with the desert sand. Akhenaten was one of the most interesting pharaohs there was. He was born as Amunhotep IV, but he believed that the only important god was Aten, which was the disk of the sun, so he changed his name to Akhenaten. Ancient Egyptian religion was based around having a whole family of gods. Each god had their essential role in keeping order in the universe. Akhenaten's rejection of this belief was not only shocking to the ancient Egyptians, they thought it would literally lead to the collapse of their world. After Akhenaten's death, his young son Tutankhamun I read that far too quickly. His young son Tutankhaten took the throne. He is the one pharaoh that almost everyone has heard of, which is ironic because his reign was very short. He was killed when he was only 20. We know so much about him because of the discovery of his tomb in the hidden valley. Tutankhaten undid everything his father had done. He changed his name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun and began to worship the other gods again. As a child king, he probably had little choice in what happened. Older, more powerful men at court would have been in real control and may have had him murdered when he became old enough to have opinions of his own. Ramesses II was one of the most famous Egyptian pharaohs. He had a long reign and fought a lot of battles to gain more land for Egypt. He made Egypt more powerful than it had ever been before. Finally, the third intermediate period, the late period, 1070 to 332 BCE, Ramesses II was a warlike ruler, but his battles didn't keep Egypt safe. After his death, Egypt was weakened and many rivals fought for the throne. With no single strong ruler, Egypt broke up into many smaller kingdoms. Finally, during what is called the Late Period, Egypt was ruled by a succession of other nations, like the Hyksos had done. These foreign rulers adopted Egyptian culture. So we've got Greek Egypt, 332 to 30 BCE. In 332 BCE, Alexander, a great Greek king, conquered Egypt. It was crowned pharaoh. Like other foreign rulers, he showed great respect for Egyptian customs and even built new temples to their gods. He made his general Ptolemy ruler of Egypt. Ptolemy's descendants became the Greek rulers of Egypt for many years. For many years, the Ptolemies followed Egyptian customs. Alexandria, founded by and named after Alexander, became the new capital city of Egypt and traded with Greece. The end of the ancient Egypt. Meanwhile, a new civilization called Rome was growing. As Rome's power and influence grew, Egypt's lessened. Rome wanted to take over the rich country of Egypt. The last pharaoh of Egypt was a queen called Cleopatra the Seventh. Cleopatra was a brave ruler, determined to keep her throne, but she had very little power. For a while, she was able to keep the powerful Romans on her side. She had a relationship with a Roman leader called Julius Caesar and had his child. But Julius Caesar lost power, and eventually, in despair, Cleopatra killed herself. After Cleopatra's death, Rome took over Egypt completely. There were no more pharaohs. In 535 CE, the last Egyptian temple was closed by the Roman emperor. Who knew that there was a link between the Romans and the Egyptians? Nearly there, guys. Okay, so there's a quick quiz there. So I'm not going to go through that right now, but you are more than welcome to pause the video and have a go and see whether you can match the top 10 pharaohs with their most famous achievements. Okay, and then you can check through when you go on to Rising Stars yourself to see whether you are correct. Okay. I apologise, I've probably pronounced some of those pharaohs' names wrong. They are troublesome. Go on to Rising Stars, have a little look at the quiz that I skipped past. You can read all of that again by yourself if you want to. And other than that, have a wonderful day. And I will see you through all your work. Bye. See you later.